Welcome to Divine Downloads. I'm your host, Cassandra, and today we have a very special guest, Gary Bodley, channeling Joshua and giving us next level law of attraction wisdom. I have to say, I don't feel like I've ever felt so called out on my own stuff on an episode other than this one. This episode is truly a special one. I've re-listened to it myself a few times since recording it, and I'm so excited to share it with you. I just know it's going to open up so many expansive thoughts and upgrade your energy in so many ways. So enjoy. I am so excited to introduce you guys to Gary Bodley. We met through magical circumstances. We were connected. I was on his podcast and we hit it off. By the end of the interview, I was like, I need you on Divine Downloads. He is just incredible. And for those of you that are really into Abraham Hicks and are familiar with those teachings of channeling these love, source energy entities, right? Gary has channeled Joshua or the Joshuas. How would you call it?
Joshua, yeah.
Joshua. And so it's a non-physical, correct me here if I'm wrong, Gary, but a non-physical entity that is pure love source energy.
Yeah, it's actually a group.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's a group that gets together and it flows in and out with, depending on who I'm talking to or who the group is that's assembled, it's all their inner selves and their guides and supporters in the non-physical. And so it was explained to me one time that imagine there's a group of people around a boardroom and they're all contributing towards one idea or even writing a book or something. They're all doing it together. And so now think of that as a theater, and all the seats in the theater are filled. We'll now expand that to an arena, and now expand that to a football stadium, and now expand that to all the stadiums in all the world. Right? That's how big it is.
Whoa. I love that. I got goosebumps when you said that. Whenever I imagine my guides, I always kind of meet with them in a boardroom setting. So when you first said that, I was like, I've been to the boardroom. I need to upgrade to this, like all the football arenas in the world, though. That's pretty incredible. So Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself. How does, let's say, quote unquote, an average guy living his life end up connecting with this, incredible channeling experience?
Well, first of all, channeling is a natural ability that everyone has. And when you get to a level of vibration that is high enough, it'll naturally occur. So I've been doing this for the last 9 years and teaching a lot of courses. We have a boot camp and ascension experience and all these things going on. And it's very common for people to start channeling themselves after they've gone through an experience like that. So it's natural. In fact, you and I are having a conversation now. So the thoughts that are coming to us, where are those thoughts coming from? You don't manufacture thoughts in your brain. You, like everything else, attract thoughts because this is a reality of attraction. So depending on our vibration, we attract certain thoughts. And if we're feeling good, in alignment, if we're, not worried about anything, then we attract thoughts that are based in love. And that's just natural. If we're in fear, if we're having a hard time, if something happened and we feel negative emotion, we can't really access that. We access a consciousness of fear. And so we bring up urges to control conditions and thoughts based in fear and all that. And that's how most people are living. Most people are living in great fear. And so they don't really have access. But once they start meditating and thinking about themselves from a higher perspective and realizing that we're all spiritual beings having a physical experience, that nothing's serious going on, and that the whole design of the system is for joy and expansion. And so if you think of yourself in those higher terms, then you naturally connect to this higher consciousness. Well, for me, that happened over a course of several years. And it started when I had, been very successful in real estate and had that old Western style life where I was efforting and struggling to make money, thinking that would get people
Hustling,
to like, love, and appreciate me. Yep, doing all that stuff. Got to a point where me and all my friends who were also doing the same thing and also very successful were like, what now? This isn't satisfying at all. We did all this stuff. We've made all this money. We have the houses and the cars and the boats and all that stuff. And we're trying to figure out, well, this isn't bringing us happiness at all. And what happened was a lot of us, I ended up losing all my money in 2007 in the financial crisis. So I lost everything. All my other friends either had DUIs or divorces or lawsuits or something going on. And all these things were happening that were, now that I see, were all designed to bring us all along on the spiritual journey. But back then it seemed like a crisis. So I lost all my money. My house went into foreclosure. This other house we were building went into foreclosure. I had a 32-unit townhouse development that went into foreclosure. My office building, lost all my businesses, and ended up moving to this sweet house that friends of ours owned. We're renting from them. It was on this nature preserve, the last house on the river. You couldn't see any neighbors. It was just pure nature. It was incredible. Sorry, there's a fire truck outside.
That's okay. It's not that bad.
And so I was
just
left
calling
with
our attention to the story, right?
Yeah. Right. Trauma. So I was left with what am I going to do now? And a friend of ours brought us The Secret. And so my wife Lily and I got really into it, and we listened. It was a CD. We listened to it over and over and over again, and we were like, "This is great! This is great!" And then in our own library, we found "Ask and It Is Given" by Abraham Hicks. We owned that, and we had listened to it before, but it didn't make any sense. So we listened to it again, and it's like, "Oh my God, this is great!" And I'm like, "I'm going to use this law of attraction stuff to get all my money back." So I was still in the illusion back then. Right?
Exactly.
So then we went to a Asheville retreat with Abraham. It was a 4-day retreat there, or a 2-day retreat. That's 4 Abraham sessions, and everything just changed from then. Well, things were going good, and we're just both of us were focusing on our passions, and we're having a good time. And we moved out of that house and moved into Palm Beach, which is where we always wanted to live. And then we found a house to buy, and with seller financing because we had lost all our credit as well. And everything was going great. And then I had this huge inspiration to start meditating. And I'd always resisted that because, being alone with your thoughts is scary.
Yeah.
I got to tell you a story. I just had a friend who did a 10-day completely dark, silent retreat.
Wow.
So
it's
she
like
goes into
next
this
level.
She goes by herself into this room, no lights, no sound, no one else there, just people bringing her meals. But it goes through this like contraption where you can't see any light as you don't know what you're eating, right?
Oh my gosh.
For 10 days. Okay. So imagine being alone with thoughts. So meditating is not so hard compared to that. So, start meditating, and I can't even get through a minute. It's so hard. I can't do this. But I kept doing it the next day and next day. And then I was doing 15 minutes, and I was all doing it to the Abraham meditation, so they were guided. And then this presence started coming over me. So I started to feel this tingling in the side of my head. Really, really noticeable. But, not weird. I mean, it was weird, but wasn't uncomfortable. It was sort of comforting. And it was just coming, and then, and then I go, well, this feels like a presence. And thought it was weird, but then I started asking it questions like I was in the hot seat with Abraham.
I love it.
And I was getting back these answers that were blowing my mind. I was like, this can't be me making this stuff up.
Yeah.
And they were so clear, and I understood them, and it made sense. And so I didn't tell anyone, but that kept happening every day, and I just really felt this. And then one day I said, "Who is this?" And they said, "We are Joshua." Really obviously. Now the funny thing about this
I
is
like that you're saying. I just want to point out. I like that you're saying that when you just said really obviously they said that, and then also when the presence came that it was like really noticeable. Because I think sometimes people are like, "Oh, like could I miss it?" And it's like, no, you couldn't miss it, right?
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
Well, the tricky part is that it's in sounds like my own thoughts.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't sound like another completely different voice, like the voice of God that you might assume.
Yeah.
And, that makes sense though
Samuel
to me.
Jackson.
One, it would be too scary if it was a different voice because you think you're being possessed.
Yeah.
And two, well, these are my thoughts, and I've always had thoughts coming in, and they've probably always been there, but just didn't think it was anything other than me. So I keep going and don't tell anyone really, and it goes on for about 4 months. So it started in the summer of 2013. Then on November 15th of 2013, they said, get up and go right, right, right. So I got up for meditation, went in my office, closed the doors, turned on the computer, and just started tapping out on my word processor. And I didn't even know what I was writing. It sounded like, mumbo jumbo. And when it was done, I had written 3 pages. And that's exactly the introduction to the first book, which is A Perception of Reality. And so I printed it out. I showed Lily. Our friends come over, Deborah, Joe, and Frank, and I show them, and they're reading it, and Deborah Joe's crying while she's reading it. And it's like, what is this? And I said, I don't know what this is. And so the next day I got up and wrote again. And in 8 weeks, the entire book was done. Start to finish, chapter titles, section breaks. I would stop at one point. I would do it about a half an hour every day. And then the next day would start again. You read the book now and you can't tell where I started and stopped. Nothing was edited other than typos. After that book was done, the next book started, which is Health, Wealth, and Love. It's also 300 pages, and it took exactly 8 weeks. So in 16 weeks, I now have 2 books. And then just stuff started snowballing after that. And then, so I'm channeling only by writing. And then I had sent a couple books to Jules Johnson, who's the CEO of the Law of Attraction Radio Network. And she's like, oh, you got to have a podcast. So got some friends together. We did a podcast. And then she says, you got to be a speaker on my Law of Attraction cruise with Pam Grout. So I go on that. And so I had been doing the podcast for about 6 months, and sort of a following came up about that. And I get on this cruise, and there's about 100 people or so. And Pam Grout has just, written E Squared. So that's a 5 million copy book, bestseller. She's got 4 people. I've got 80 people, right? They came from Australia. It was weird,
Yeah.
And so on that cruise, Jules, who's a hypnotist, hypnotizes me, and I start speaking Joshua instead of just typing it. So now it's 9 years later, and there's all kinds of stuff that's gone on, and the podcast is huge, and my life is absolutely 180 degrees from where it was before, because before I was buying into this illusion of Western society, thinking money and success equals love and acceptance. And now I understand how this whole thing works.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I think it's so amazing because I think part of it was, yeah, you meditating, you showing up for this work and but also you being open and trusting to receive what was coming through, to roll with it, right? To not be like, okay, my meditation's over, I'm going to go to work or do whatever. To be like, no, I feel like I have to write, I'm going to write. And so I think that that's really beautiful, and it's important, like, awareness for people listening, that part of it is being open to following these intuitions or nudges or guidance kind of that comes through during our meditations. And the question I have for you is, so we talked about this on your podcast a little bit, and I'm going to put the link to your podcast below as well so people can double listen. But when I write my books, I have a very similar experience, right? It just channels through, and it's so funny because people always ask me, oh, it must be so hard. I have 3 books now, as well. And they'll be like, how do you do it? Right. And I'm like, I don't really do it. Like, I just show up, I sit in a chair, I like move my hands, but like, I don't do it, and it just comes through and they flow. And each one has actually gotten like easier because I've gotten out of my way more over the years. But what do you think? What do you feel is the difference between like that kind of channeling and the channeling where you actually have this experience of connecting with Joshua?
Well, no matter what, we're always channeling our inner selves.
Mm.
So we have to remember that our inner selves are us in the non-physical, always guiding us and always, guiding us through emotions or direct communication or inspired ideas, all that stuff. So in my case, it's just that I've come as a teacher, and this entire teaching is about a new approach to life and a new way of looking at our reality that's more empowering and effective and very practical in their everyday lives. And somehow, I think it was a pre-birth intention, and I
Mm-hmm.
had lived this incredible life before, but it was very standard American life, never thinking, and this happened when I was 50, so I'm 59 now. So it started when I was 50. So I had 50 years of a pretty remarkable life, then complete 180 to something else altogether. But the key here is that we're always guided by our inner selves, and we need not be guided by anything outside of ourselves, because that's just an illusion anyway.
Absolutely.
So what happens is that as humans in this arena where fear is part of it, we tend to look at the imperfections in order to improve either ourselves or other people or lives. So we try to control things in a way to make things better or to move towards some fantasy ideal that we have.
Yeah.
That fantasy ideal is based in this uh, all these beliefs that are limiting, and it's like chasing the carrot on the end of the stick. You'll never get there. So we all believe that we exist separate from our reality and our outside reality, and that we can impose our will on other people and other things in order to get what we lack. The truth
Yeah.
is that we are our entire reality, that everything is perfect as it is, that's all a reflection of how we feel about ourselves or how we perceive ourselves, and that if it's not working, it's because in some area we're trying to control it because we feel lack in that area.
Mm.
Lack is the illusion, abundance is the truth. So it's all from coming out of this illusion and into the truth and becoming more authentic in who we truly are, and then discovering who we truly are. We're discovering, more and more and more about ourselves and the people in our lives and that sort of thing. So the approach that we've all been taught is the approach of fear and limitation, and the new approach is the approach of absolute acceptance.
Mm.
So love and acceptance are the same thing, and fear and control are the same thing. But we are programmed by early age to believe we're imperfect, to believe that things should be different than they are, to wish for things, and really to act as if we're victims to our own reality, when in truth,
Yeah.
we're the creators of these realities, right?
Yeah. So this actually brings me to one of the questions that came up with for me this morning to ask you, that's been coming up a lot in my audience, and I want to ask Joshua, but first I want to talk about your experience, because you have not completed, we never complete, right? We're still like always growing and expanding, but you've been through this journey that I think a lot of people that listen to my podcast are on right now, where they have this awakening moment and they get this inspiration for a more spiritual or heart centered, I'm going to call it career path. I know that it's maybe the more 3D way of saying it, right? But that way of doing this, right? And doing the podcast like you did, hosting the ascension experience and these different things that you do that are very much, your quote unquote job right now, right? So, how did you navigate that time when you had lost all of your real estate money, lost all of this kind of previous life's financial abundance, and now found this new spiritual abundance? And we're embarking on that journey on a logistic, because I think a lot of people in my audience struggle with this logistically. How did you keep the rent paid? How did you, just that kind of like keep your basic livelihood going during that time?
You have to realize that abundance is receiving everything you need to do whatever you need to do when you need to do it.
I love that.
It's so inherently, if you're on the spiritual path of self-discovery and of service, you will be inspired to ideas that will bring in money even when it's not coming from this thing you're you're doing right now in the beginning, teaching. So remember I told you I had three inspirations that summer of 2013. One is to meditate. The second was to get interested in Bitcoin. And the third was to do yoga.
Yeah.
Right? And so I had no idea what even Bitcoin was. So I got interested in Bitcoin and ended up buying some Bitcoin in the beginning. And that ended up providing everything I needed the whole wait time. But also, I was also really interested in renovating houses and playing poker. And so I did Joshua in the beginning, maybe an hour a day at most. And then I would go out and I would do my houses. And I had done houses before in the past, but now this is all I was doing. And I was using all the Abraham stuff to do the houses. So I was like appreciating the workers and appreciating that the neighbors and knowing that I was going to renovate this house and it'll be a benefit to not only the new buyer but all the neighbors as well, because it'll be helping the market, and taking a crappy house and making it beautiful. And I was really interested in design and choosing all the materials and all that stuff. I was really fun. That only took 2 hours a day. Then I would go to play poker, and I was playing poker tournaments and started off just having an interest in it, and then was really bad at the beginning and just kept going and going and going, and then ended up making $7,000 a month on average in profit playing poker, and just loving it and loving the people and loving all of it. So you have to find your passion. I mean, you don't have to find your passion will find you if you just open up to the fact that it's going to be there when you're ready for it, but you're going to have to push past fear. So the first time I saw that house and tried to buy a house, I had to push past fear because I had to get another investor. I didn't have my own money. And so I had a friend do it. And then, of course, I was worried about losing money and having problems with the friendship. Of course, it worked out perfectly. And same thing walking into the first poker tournament. I was the first one knocked out. And I had to push past the fear to come and do it again and again, go through the embarrassment stages. But one thing I knew is I loved both those things.
Yeah.
And they carried me through. And so then it came to a point where, so the 2000, I guess, 9 was when we lost everything. By 2012, we had bought this new house. And then into 13, 14, 15, bought some Bitcoin. And in 2015, I now had $1 million. So I went from zero to $1 million in, say, 5 or 6 years, all by following inspiration.
I love that you said that, because one of the things that I feel like is a misguided kind of spiritual law of attraction teaching that's out there is that we have to be like so one laned. And I've just never felt like that was natural to our nature. Like, we're multifaceted souls with all of these different interests. And sometimes I see this, in my clients or in people that, the audience that reach out about things. They have like one thing. They're like, I want to be this health coach, or I want to be this artist, or I want to be whatever it is, right? This one thing. And so they look at it as failure to have to do anything else. And one of the things that I mean, even to this day, like, I do very well on, my spiritual mentoring, my books, all of this stuff, but I have all these different creative projects, right? And they light me up, and they're essential to just the whole, I don't know, the whole fun thing, right? The getting to like taste all the flavors and try all the things. And I remember even when I was starting out after college, and I was waiting tables and I was doing this work, right? And I didn't have any like grand like love for waiting tables. I wasn't like, oh, I love being a waitress or anything. But I used it, and kind of like you were saying with the workers, I would play a game every day, and I'd be like, I'm gonna bless everybody that comes in, right? I was working in New York City. So you'd come in, you get people, and you'd almost like see their energy when they came in. They'd be kind of like frustrated, exhausted, and I'd play a game. Can I like transform their energy by the end of the dinner? And so it lit me up, and it flew by my time waiting tables, and it was able to just serve at this purpose. I saw it as this beautiful gift, taking care of my rent so I could like focus on my blog, make my YouTube videos, do the other things that made me fun. And I think there was like a lot of harm. I don't know how that message got out, but I feel like there's a lot of harm in saying like, okay, we're going to put like all the pressure on this one path to make all of the abundance, when abundance is something that like can flow to you in like all sorts of directions in all
Exactly.
sorts of creative ways.
The issue that people have is they believe that when they find their spiritual calling, that this is going to solve all their problems.
Yeah.
I hate my job. Oh, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that, or I wish I could do that, or I should be making YouTube videos and these sort of things. And then all my problems will go away. The fact is, you have no problems. You're only focused on what you're perceiving as problems, but everything is a perfect reflection of how you're being. So just do exactly what you did and lean into what you're doing right now. And your job is not to be the spiritual leader and teacher. Your job is to express your love to every aspect of your reality.
Ooh, say that again.
Your job, your intention. So you had pre-birth intentions. The first one was to expand in joy, not in suffering. So you're going to expand through every experience. You can expand in joy or suffering. That's up to you and your perspective. The second is to express your love to every single thing in your reality. So if you could imagine that your mate is connected to you with a heart, with a string from your heart to that person's heart, and your job is not to receive love back from that person, but to express love through that string to that person. So you want to make that golden ray of light big and thick. Same with your job and your car and your parents and your friends and even your enemies. You want to express love nonstop from source through you to everything else, because everything else is you. So there's two approaches to life. One is the creator of your reality. You perceive yourself as a creator and you express love from source through you to everything else. But what most people do is they perceive themselves as victims, and they're trying to get something from their reality that makes them feel something they lack, and it can't happen.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. And what do you think is the fastest? Because I mean, I'm sure you do too. We see this all the time. This is like the default kind of human way sometimes. How do you snap someone out of that? Can you snap someone out of that? How does or is there a tool? Because I see this sometimes where people will get into this habit they get into the habit of victimhood, right? The habit of like, oh, like I can't get a job, money doesn't come to me, things don't work out for me, the guy never works out, I can't lose whatever it is. It's the like, it just doesn't happen for me. And then they're like, but I'm trying so hard, right? And it's so sometimes like, I have compassion for it, right? But sometimes being on the other side of it, I just want to like dump some like ice water over there. I'm being like, no.
So we all feel that way, except that the reason that we want to change them is because when we look at them and see that they're struggling, we feel negative emotion, because from our perspective, it seems like they're struggling. All they're doing is going through an expansive experience. But from our perspective, it seems like, oh, their life would be so much better if they just did what I said. Right? Because it's so
Call
obvious.
me out. You're so right.
They're involved in their life and their perception of reality and their problems and all that stuff, but we can see through all that. Now, here's the trick. As we ascend, we're going to see it more clearly. We're also going to be more emotionally sensitive, but we can't let our doubts and fears and negative emotion make us want to change their conditions.
Yeah.
We have to accept that they're going through their process at their time. The only thing we can do is become examples of alignment, as Abraham says, right? Okay, so what does that mean? Imagine that everyone's in fear and everyone's looking towards success or fame or celebrity as the way out of the fear, the way out of their money problems, the way out of their relationship problems, their health problems, all this stuff. Those guys have it figured out, right? Some do, some don't. But they don't have any real examples. So the real examples are those of us who are on this new approach to life, where we see ourselves as the creator, where we live actually in true abundance, which means we don't need to hoard money. Money is like energy, and it flows and comes and flows. We don't care. We don't actually care about anything. We don't worry about the future. We don't regret the past, and we see the present moment as perfect. In fact, we see ourselves in this moment as perfect, knowing that we cannot improve in this moment, and that self-improvement is a myth. What we are doing is expanding to new levels of awareness, but that's no more or less perfect than we are now. As we do this, we're inspired to do things like have this conversation, right?
Yeah.
This conversation is an example of a conscious interaction between people who are open to the idea that we are not victims.
Yeah.
Right? So we're doing this. So this is all inspired. So it's the inspired action that causes these examples, and then people can say, I don't know about this idea. Joshua's first words they ever wrote was, everything is right. There's no wrong anywhere in the universe. That's the beginning and the end of Joshua's teachings. Okay.
Wow.
What we've been taught is that there is tons of things that are wrong, that people are bad, that there's evil in the world, and that there is no such thing as perfection.
Yeah.
But now we understand that every manifestation in physical reality is a manifestation from source. Source is love, so everything is based in love. You see it in black and white in this dualistic way, good and bad, right and wrong, based in your perspective. So, planes hit the World Trade Center. We all think it's the worst thing that ever happened. We're miserable. And yet there's another million people on the other side of the world think that's a good thing, right? Their perspective is different than our perspective. They see it as good. We see it as bad. This is true of every single thing there is. So it's all subjective. So then how do you change that perspective? Well, you zoom out. So if you look at the universe and you zoom out and you look at the stars in the sky, it's perfect. You wouldn't change any of that, right?
Yeah.
You zoom down into like a microscope looking at a cell in your body. That cell looks perfect. You wouldn't change that. But when you are focused, right here and everything's right there, well, then you start to notice imperfections that don't really exist.
Yeah.
And it's this habit of looking at problems to solve rather than appreciating the perfection that's actually inherent in the moment.
It's funny. It kind of reminds me of in a what a real like life case scenario in a way of some of my girlfriends that are like wanting to get married, right? And being on like I'm getting married next month, and we've been living together for 3 years, so I'm practically married pretty much. And they talk to me about like, oh, I can't wait like to find someone, whatnot. And my advice to them is always, and I think it relates to your advice in general, is just enjoy right now. Like enjoy right now. There's so many beautiful things about being married, and there's so many beautiful things about being single. And right. And like once you're married, like this part of your life will have transitioned on, right? So just soak it up, soak up the Netflix shows, soak up the like, walk around with the face. I mean, whatever, I do all that anyway, but like, all the different things
Going out to
that
the clubs.
yeah, or whatever it is for you, right? Like soak
Yeah.
up like this is where you are in this moment. And I had this kind of thought a few weeks ago about how when I look back at the past, even at the times when I was like really like hustling and struggling financially, when I felt like things really weren't working out, when all the guys were like, not working out or whatever, I look back at it and like I'm like those were the days, man. That was so fun, right? Like yeah, I was eating like I remember I was eating like rice, beans, and corn that I like would make in like a Tupperware. I mean, it wasn't like a glamorous time, but man, like that was the like right. And I think about if only we could if we could bring that perspective, I think so often, like when we look back sometimes at like things that we work through in like our youth or whatnot, right? We have such like love and joy and can kind of like laugh it off of like, of course I did that. I lived on beans or whatever ridiculous thing we did, right? And if we could only bring that like sentiment to the present moment, right? Into like whatever that thing is in that moment, being like, oh, and this is the experience where I get to like do this, right? And not judge it so harshly.
Yeah, you just illustrated that point of zooming out, because when you're looking at the past, you know how everything worked out. But
Yeah.
in the moment, you don't know how it's going to work out. So, this uneasiness of perceiving that you're not going to attain your ideal, or you're going to be homeless, or whatever it is, that anxiety is a false perception.
Mm.
Fast forward 10 years, oh, yeah, it all worked out. So, what's happening is you have a limiting belief, and a limiting belief is just a belief without enough information. Once that limiting belief gets enough information, it's now an empowering belief because you have it all, right? So now you look
Yeah.
back and go, oh my God, that was so much fun back then. I wish I could have seen it, right? But
Yeah.
I know how everything worked out. So you don't have the same limiting beliefs you did 15 years ago. So what we're doing then is saying that anytime you feel negative emotion, it's an indication of a limiting belief. So how do I process that limiting belief to prove it's not true? Because all limiting beliefs are false. All
Yeah.
of them. Even limiting belief about death, right?
Yeah.
All limiting beliefs are triggered by events that happen and spark fear. When that event happens, you're looking at it from a limited perspective.
Yeah.
So you're looking at it like, this is going to harm me, and then you receive negative emotion from your inner self, indicating that you're choosing the improper or the false perspective. So what we always want to do is raise our perspective, saying, oh no, this is always going to work out. This is part of my journey. This is an experience I need to have. How can I look at this to see it's good and not bad? Why do I feel the fear? What is this limiting belief that I'm holding? And it's always having to do with well, the limiting belief that we all have is that we are victims. We are not the creators of reality. So that's the core limiting belief that we all have. And that limiting belief is based in the greatest fear that we all have, which is the fear of loss.
Mm.
So all fear boils down to the fear of loss. Loss of life in death, loss of love in rejection, loss of appreciation or respect from others in failure. And then you can branch out this tree as far as you want to go, but every fear you have boils down to the trunk of the tree, which is loss. And loss obviously is an illusion. If we're creating our realities and generating our realities, it's all new in every moment. So we can't lose anything.
Mm.
When someone dies in your life, you say, I lost that person. What you're losing is this ideal in your mind of a future with that person that was never guaranteed or promised or anything. You didn't lose any of the memories. You didn't lose anything except for this projection into the future of what you thought would be ideal. And
Mm.
so that loss is an illusion, because the ideal that you created was never going to happen. It was a fantasy, right? That was the
Yeah.
illusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we feel grief in the loss of something, because we project in the future a future with this person in our lives.
Yeah. And even just the loss of the physical presence, um which is not the true essence of who we are. I feel like I've been navigating grief, and it's like it's funny because it's like there's on one hand, it's like the loss of being able to like pick up the phone and call or, hug someone. But then there's also like the negation of that loss because I feel like more connected to her than ever before. We talk all of the time. She's always with me. And so it was really even more of a gain, which she's helped me see. But yeah, I definitely see that. We see that loss, and even, the loss of even opportunities, I think, is a really, one of my spiritual background is in A Course in Miracles, right? And so one of the things that A Course in Miracles teaches is that I'm going to call it our human mind, right? Our human mind doesn't know what's best for us, right? We think we know based on the information we're given at any time, that like this is good and that is bad, right? So we could perceive the loss of a job or the loss of an opportunity or the loss of a relationship as a negative thing, but actually we don't really know. Even if you start it, we don't know, right? I don't know for sure. And oftentimes when someone like loses a job or loses an opportunity or loses a relationship, like it's like, okay, congratulations, like that was ready to be released and now onwards and like onto something that's even more in alignment, right? But yeah, I think that takes a practice, right, to remember that.
It takes a commitment to looking at it from the higher perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I lost all my money, all my businesses, all my houses, all my stuff, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yep.
What was funny was at the time, I'm in a great house. We have enough money. We still have nice cars. We still have our friends. We still have everything. And it's just the bank account was different, is all. That turned out, because I look back and I could have made one decision. Had I made this one decision that seems obvious now, I would have had much more money back then, wouldn't have lost anything. But I would have never found the secret. I would have never found Abraham. I would never been striving for this different thing. I would never start meditating. And so it's so obvious now that that had to happen. And actually, I had to make that mistake of not making that choice. So it wasn't a mistake, which means that every single decision I've ever made was perfect because it all led to where I am right now having this conversation with you. I don't know where else I would have been. I know for sure it wouldn't have been as satisfying as this life. This
Yeah.
life is full and well-rounded and abundant and free and just fun after fun after fun. And that life was effort and struggle. So I know the difference between the two lives. So that key there was the loss. The loss led to this. So it wasn't actually a loss. It was the opportunity that I unknowingly took.
I love that. And I love that, I just this past, I think year and a half, really came into that truth of you can't make a wrong decision. Because for a long time, I held on to this, you know, heaviness around decisions, like this worry, like always wanting to make the best decision, the most educated, informed, whatnot, weigh out my options, all the things. And then it just became spiritual, where I'd be like, I want to make sure I make like the aligned decision, but I just kind of did the same thing, but put spirituality on it. And then it was literally one of the most freeing gifts that I've been given was when I had that awareness come upon me of just there are no wrong decisions. You can't do a wrong decision because if you take a turn and there's something you were meant to experience, like you're still going to experience it, right? And so it's really like it's like a choose your own adventure, but all roads lead to Rome. And you can't, yeah. And some of those things that we look back and can say, I wish I would have done that better. And it's like, well, you had to not do that better because it's exactly what you were supposed to do. And I love that you actually said, because this is also one of the things I feel like is one of those fun like divine breadcrumbs to like look back at, is like now you're like, it seems obvious that I could have just made this one decision and things would have kind of like just panned out, gone back on as planned. And yet I would just say maybe you were divinely blocked from making that decision because you weren't meant to, because things weren't meant to go on as planned, right? And sometimes I think in hindsight, when we look back at things, the quote unquote path that like we're like, oh, I could have done that, or why didn't I just do that? Like, what, I have so many things like that in my life where I look back and I'm like, yeah, I could have just done that, but it's like, of course I didn't, because exactly what you said, if I did that thing that makes way more sense, that I totally had the intelligence to know to do at that time, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I wasn't
Exactly.
supposed to go down that path. And doesn't that give hello, people listening, doesn't that give you so much freedom to just like trust? Like you can just make your decisions and it's going to guide you to where you need to go.
If you think about that mindset too, if you have the mindset that I've never made an incorrect decision, it's always been the perfect decision, I can't make a wrong decision, then all that doubt and anxiety around decision making is gone. And you just make the decision earlier and quicker and clearer and more aligned.
And you expedite the process.
You sure
Yeah.
do. And less resistance.
So, Gary, can we call on Joshua? Is there a process?
Yep, I need a few minutes to, not a few minutes, about 60 seconds
Sounds
to
good.
do my preparation and set my intentions, and then I'll come back and they'll say we're thrilled to be here, and they might say a few words and then ask questions, and we'll go from there.
Sounds amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
We are thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here.
So we'd like to start off by presenting a idea of who you are. You've been seeing yourself from this higher perspective more and more of the time. You've been acting on so much inspiration. You've been leading with your heart. You've been communicating eloquently and brilliantly to those who are brave enough to listen to what you have to say and to think in a new way. And you're actually ascending yourself. So all the things that you're not doing for others, you're doing for yourself. And the side effect is that others may have this example that they can listen to, and that they can be moved in a way that corresponds to how they resonate with you. So none of them are strangers to you. All of them are known by you. That you've interacted in countless previous lives, that you are eternally linked in the non-physical, and that you have all decided to do this together. So you've said, I'll come in and I will think in a more spiritual way. I will be more create a trajectory that will lead me towards who I truly am. And I'll be this example and be inspired to share what I know with you. And they all come to say, we will support you in what you're doing. And as a side effect, we will also move along our journey of self discovery as well. So it's a symbiotic relationship that you are doing primarily for yourself. So it wouldn't matter if it was one person or a million people or 10 million people. You are doing it sheerly for the joy of it. So there is nowhere to go. There is no achievement to be had. It's just for the joy of the moment. So as you bring yourself down into this present clear moment, knowing everything's perfect and just doing whatever you're inspired to do, whatever that is, know for sure that those actions are the actions that you intended and they intended for you to have as well, that will lead you all into this full circle of moving forward on each and everyone's journey of self-discovery exactly as you intended prior to your birth.
That was so perfect. That was so perfect because I feel like you called out something in me that I didn't even realize was going to be called out in this podcast. But, Gary did it and now you did it in a completely different way. And it's true. Sometimes I think so much about what am I doing for my clients? What am I doing for my audience? Even today, like thinking about what questions I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about, I wrote a list of like all these things that come up, with my audience and things like that. And so just so interesting how sometimes I make decisions. And it's funny because what a finessing thing. I make decisions um, from what's in the highest, what I perceive to be of highest service to other people. And sometimes it's not always the same as what brings me the most joy.
Exactly. So always travel along in your highest joy, knowing that this is your journey of self discovery. And everything else is a side effect.
Okay, so going along with that, what what do you say, Joshua, to the balance, or maybe it's not supposed to be a balance, but the balance of our kind of earthly responsibilities that we have and the following of the joy, right? So, for instance, let's say I made a commitment to do something, right? And then in that week or whatever, this is just an example, I don't have anything specific, but I'm thinking of, I'm finding more joy in somewhere else, right? How do you balance that when your joy is not always where your commitments are?
When you've made a commitment, you have this earthly physical idea that other people will not appreciate you if you break that commitment, or they'll like you better if you maintain that commitment.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that sometimes things pop up and you weren't even aware of them. And you're like, well, geez, now I have this conflict here and I can't do this thing. But I don't want to break that commitment. And you just say to yourself, what am I most excited by? Which one is the most exciting to me? And then you choose that one in the moment. Because guess what? When you made that commitment weeks ago, it was a different version of you. That version of you has expanded. That doesn't exist anymore. So now there's a whole new set of things that interest you.
Yep.
And yet you're tied to this idea of commitment and responsibility and what will people think in order to appease them so that they see you in the way you want to be seen. Because you think it matters what they think. Because the only thing that they're thinking is whatever you're thinking. Because you're projecting from your mind into their mind back to you, because it's always a reflection. So if you're feeling like you're going to let down someone and you have great fear about that, these conflicts have to happen. They're called manifestation events. They're going to show you that you have a limiting belief in this area that's holding you back. That limiting belief is preventing you from acting on inspiration in the moment. Now, if you do choose to cancel one commitment, when you write that email to tell them about it, the words are going to flow perfectly because you're aligned, and the highest and most elegant words are going to flow through you on paper to them. They're going to get it as long as there's no wobble in your vibration. However, if you fear that they're going to dislike you or call you names or whatever this is, or be angry, you're going to tap into fear consciousness. And you're going to write a bunch of mumbo jumbo trying to defend yourself that's completely inauthentic, and they'll see right through it. You want to reach the state of alignment. You want to understand that everything's working out perfectly. You understand that, how did this happen? I was so interested in this, and now I'm not interested anymore because something else is coming up. And then all of a sudden, you have to do something that you fear doing. And then you have to look at it from the higher perspective and say, no, what's most important to me is what excites me and interests me and gives me joy in this moment. That's what I'm going to do. Everything else will work out. If it's meant to be, it'll happen at a later date. Does that make sense?
So now that makes total sense. And I think it makes total sense that in those moments, I feel like there's some sort of saying that goes around like this, but it's like, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And that's what I really came through in that about it. It's like, clearly, because as I do have this kind of I want to be seen as responsible and in integrity and da 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 da, and those are all traits that are very virtuous here, but at the same time I'm not in integrity or being responsible with myself or my alignment if I'm sacrificing it, and it's going into that thing that's actually scary or feels would make me nervous, right? Would have an expansion experience in that. So going off of that, I mentioned to Gary earlier that when I was younger, in my 20s, I worked as a waitress. I did not want to work as a waitress. I didn't I didn't really have passion for that, but I was able to find gratitude for the financial stability that it provided me. And I was able to kind of make a game of it, and bless people while I was waiting tables. So what do you say is the kind of the discernment around doing something that doesn't inherently bring you joy and bringing gratitude and playfulness to it versus just acknowledging, okay, well, this thing, let's say at that time, if I was waitressing doesn't bring me joy, and tried to just do something else. Where do you stand on that?
Nothing can bring you joy. You're the creator of the joy. You bring the joy to everything. The misconception is that the victim has the outside conditions must offer them something that they do not already feel. That's in opposition to how the system works. The outside conditions are reflections of how you feel. So if you feel unworthy, you're going to be treated as if you're unworthy. You'll notice that in some areas of your life, you feel worthy. You feel confident. You feel like you can do anything. And those areas all work. Other areas of your life, you have a little doubt. You have a little concern. You have a little limiting belief about who you are. And then manifestation events have to pop up to show you that you're perceiving yourself in a limited way. Now, most people will have these manifestation events and say, oh, that's proof that I'm no good. That's proof that I'm not getting what I want. That's proof that the environment is agnostic or even malevolent, and that I have to control everything if I'm going to get anything out of this reality. When you come to understand that you're the creator of the reality, you're only here to express love to all of it. So wherever you are now, you have to understand is the perfect place for you. So where can you add love to your reality? Well, most people are transactional. They say, I'll love you if you love me first. I'll work hard for you if you pay me first. I'll do this in order to get this. That's transactional.
Yeah.
It's conditional. The creator says, I don't care what comes back because it's just a reflection. So I'm going to enhance my relationship to every aspect of my reality and every person in it by offering love and acceptance to it. And acceptance is the key. I accept where I am now as perfect. Doesn't mean I'm settling for it. I just realize that I've created these conditions based on the vibration I've been offering all this time, and this is what I have. This happens to be perfect. I can't see it all the time. I have been focused on flaws and imperfections, but it's perfect. Okay, let's establish that fact. Where I am now is perfect. With every experience I have, I'm going to expand either in fear or in love. In fear, it's not going to feel good. In fear, it's going to be effort and struggle. In fear, it's going to ask me to control it. In love, well, it's just going to enhance everything. Because if I express love, my reality has to reflect that. Has to. So I'm going to accept this job that I'm at, accept the people there, accept where I stand in my relationships, accept where I stand in my finances. And know that because of my previous misperception of who I was as this victim to this malevolent universe, I was in fear of so many things. Now I understand that I'm creator of my reality. As such, how do I create? I create based in my perception of myself. So if I perceive myself a little bit more elevated today than yesterday, then I can expect that I will receive inspiration based on this higher perception of myself. That inspiration will ask me to take some action. If I take the action, I'll expand in love.
I like that, and the slight difference in using the word inspiration leading to action instead of just like following my joy, right? Because sometimes in those moments, and I found this like in my business, right? Now, obviously there are certain aspects of my business, like getting to talk to you and you know whatnot that I love. And then there are other aspects of my business that are like more like managerial office stuff that are part of it, right? But inspiration comes in all ways, right? So sometimes the inspiration is, oh, I need a new payment processor, and I see it. Okay, yeah, that's not as like glamorous, right? But it's inspiration nonetheless that I take action on. That's ultimately making it ease. And so I think sometimes there's this perception that like, oh, following my joy means I'm just gonna like end up. I'm just gonna go like play my guitar on the street or whatnot. Which maybe that's part of it. Who knows? But you might also get the inspiration to be like, oh, wow, there's a really cute coffee shop. Like maybe I'll get a job at the coffee shop while I'm playing the guitar. Maybe I'll play the guitar at the coffee shop after I work as a barista or whatever. Right. And it's about that, getting that inspiration. And Gary used the word interesting before, right? Like, oh, that's interesting, right? Like to be like, oh, that might be an interesting, like, I can work as a waitress, and then that'll give me, like, the way I thought about it at the time, it was like, it'll give me all these hours to focus on this thing I really love. So the whole thing really was done, what you were saying, in kind of like this bubble of love, right? It was all encompassing, and just I love that discernment, because I think I see that a lot right now. People not really seeing that discernment.
So let's define joy. Joy is interest, curiosity, fun, excitement, exhilaration, interest. It's everything above the emotional horizon line. Anything that feels good is joy. Anything, and interest is joy. Anything that feels bad is resistance. So you're following your joy simply means that you're living in the state of being that's aligned with who you truly are. And in that perception of yourself, in alignment with who you truly are, you receive positive emotions. All of that is joy. The inspiration that comes in that state will always be for your highest good. But here's the caveat. When the inspiration comes, it's going to lead you on an expansive journey to a more ascended version of yourself. So it's taking the limited version of yourself and moving it to an expanded version. The limited version of yourself is not the expanded version. There has to be a journey there. So the limited version of yourself will always feel fear at any inspiration. Oh, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't want to work those hours. I don't want to do that thing. I don't want to meet all those new people. I don't want to do this, that, the other thing. My joy is staying where I am or not doing anything or laying on the couch or watching TV or these sort of things. It's the excuse of joy to opt out of the action that could cause some fear. Once the fear is pushed past and you take the action's easy. It's effortless, it's effective.
Yes, I'm so glad you say that, because one of the things that Abraham Hicks talks a lot about is like downstream. And I understand what that means. But I think sometimes, like you said, it can be misconstrued as like, well, what's downstream is just to watch Netflix. What's downstream is just to like not do anything. And it's true. It's like the aspect of like the downstream, right, or the thing that flows easily, right, or feels like it's in flow. Like it was funny, just this morning I had a bunch of like voice memos from a couple of my girlfriends like, oh my god, you're in such flow, like all this stuff is happening. And the thing is, like, a lot is going on right now. I'm very far away from laying on the couch watching Netflix right now and what's going on in my life, but like you said, it's like a lot of inspired actions. And then when you're doing the inspired actions, that's when like the stream flows, right? But I think that's so important to call out to someone that it is normal to feel that fear. In fact, that fear is an indication that you're in the right path. So then what do you say to someone when they're like, okay, I want this? I'll use myself as an example since that was my lesson today. There's a creative project that I really want to start working on, right? And I'm like trying to find the time, but I'm probably going to have to like reorganize some things, cancel some things, make space to just logistically get it done. And there's fear there in like the amount of stuff I'm going to have to kind of lose and move and shift around or whatnot in that way. How does someone, when they want to take that bold step and worrying kind of about that, I think a lot of our fear, right, comes from the earthly consequences of things, right? What advice would you give to kind of move through that?
First of all, there is no wrong. Everything is working out perfectly. There is no time. It doesn't matter when it gets done. And there's no outcome that's going to make it any better than it is now because it's already perfect now. When you receive the inspiration, you create this ideal outcome that you think will make you feel good. And nothing outside of you can make you feel good. So no matter what you do to change those conditions and work on this creative project and have it manifest in this wonderful thing you think it's going to get it, when you get up there and get the awards and the accolades and the appreciation for it, and people are going to say, oh my God, you're incredible. This is so great. That's not going to make you feel good. No. Only you can make you feel good. Now, you could use that as an excuse to feel good, but why would you want to do that? Yeah. You could use not doing it as an excuse to feel bad. Why would you want to do that? Yeah. Simply know that when you're inspired, there's only one thing you can do. One thing. What's that one thing? You can tap on the computer. You can research something. You can call a friend. You can drive to the grocery store. You can do one thing. You can't do all the things in a row. Now, when you do the one thing, you're going to expand through doing that one thing. That's an experience. The one thing is the only thing you need to do. That one thing you can do in the moment. And there's always, always, always time to do that one thing, because that one thing is only going to take a couple minutes. Do the one thing. Write the list. Write the outline. Call that person. Find out what you want the font to be. Yeah. Whatever it is. And do the one thing. As you push past the fear and say, oh, there's too many things to do. There's too many things to do. And you just do that one thing, you'll expand to a new level of awareness and clarity. The next thing can come through. However, the next thing, be aware, may not be related to this idea whatsoever.
I'm familiar with it.
So give up your attachment to the outcome and give your attachment to having this linear process of this leads to this, leads to this leads to this, and finally, I'll feel good. Finally, I'll get what I want. Finally, I get what I'm like. You see, what you think you want is different than what you truly want.
Yeah.
The only thing you truly want is to expand in joy, to discover who you truly are, and to be of service in this lifetime, to lead a satisfying life. That's the only thing you want. Everything else you think you want is based in lack. I want $1 million because I don't have $1 million. I want $2 million because I don't have $2 million. I have $1 million, but now I want $2 million.
Yeah.
I want this, that, the other thing, only because you don't have it.
Yeah.
Did you ever want a boyfriend before?
Yeah, when I was younger, yeah.
When you were single or with someone else? Usually when you're single. Do you want a boyfriend now?
No.
Because you have one. You see? All the things you think you want are based in lack. And you think that if I get these things I lack, I'll feel good.
Yeah.
That's asking your reality to give you something that you don't already feel.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. It's the most I've ever been called it on a podcast. This is epic. And I love it. One of the other things that's really important, I think it's so many of us have that. Okay, so here's another juicy question. So we have that through like The Secret, which you're familiar with, right? Another law of attraction teachings, right? It's like hold the vision, do the vision board, like, whatnot. And I do that too, right? I'll do visualizations and I'll kind of like allow like for me, it's like my ideal day, and I'll just kind of like see this day and see myself doing these things or whatever. And so where is where's the place for that? Is that beneficial, or is that something that, again, because the way I see it sometimes, when I'm embracing the vibration of that reality, I'm bringing those feelings into my current reality. However, it is still on some level, I guess, putting an external kind of mile marker out there, right?
Do you set goals?
Yeah. Loosely,
So
but yeah.
imagine being there on January 1st and writing down all your goals for the year and saying, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. And then January 2 comes along. And guess what? You are a completely different person. You've expanded through all the experiences of January 1. Now you're in January 2. You're completely different. So now you'd have to have a whole new list of goals because you're totally different. These are all the things you think you want. This is how you think you're going to get them. This is all effort and struggle based in your perception of yourself as the one who has to actually create it. Well, this is not how the creation process works. The creation process works like this. There's a universe out there. The universe has put this planet here, put those planets there, put the sun there, made everything perfect for you, put the nature in and the seas in and the mountains and all stuff for you so that you could be where you are and live this life you're living now. You don't have to make the sun. You don't have to make the earth. You don't have to make any of these things happen. All you have to do is perceive yourself as worthy of everything you want, and then not hold attachment to anything you think you want. Just let the universe bring it to you based on the perfect reflection of how you're believing in, how you're seeing yourself, how you're believing yourself, how you're knowing yourself. So that implies that if you lead an inauthentic life, if you create this false persona designed to get people to like, love, and respect you and to get work and to get people to follow you and get all these things, if you're inauthentic, well, then you have to get back an inauthentic reality. That's no fun. That's all pain and suffering and discontentment. However, being authentic demands that you expose yourself completely and honestly in every facet of who you are. Just as you exist in the non-physical, you are absolutely, completely authentic because all any other entity can ever see is the vibration you're offering. You can't hide anything. But in physical reality, you think you can hide things. And so you try to be a way in order to get people to like, love, and accept you that is inauthentic. So if you just follow this path of peeling off every layer of inauthenticity when you discover it, based in limiting beliefs, then you show up more as who you are. And then the reality now becomes authentic. Well, since the authentic reality is the truth, is based in love, you get this life based in love. This is everything you truly want. And as a side effect, everything you think you want, as long as it serves your journey of self-discovery. So if you think you want to win the lottery, make $600 million, would that really serve you? Could you continue this brilliant, authentic life and have $600 million? Or would you be distracted by that and go off in some other direction? Who knows?
Yeah.
If you could, then fine. Then the money can come.
Yeah.
If you are leading an inauthentic life, then you're always chasing the carrot at the end of the stick. You're on a treadmill, and it's always going to be paddling upstream, efforting and struggling in everything you do. Once you give up all the need for other people to see you in a certain way, then you just allow yourself to be who you are in physical reality as you are in the non-physical, and that connection between you and your inner self is so strong that you become a blended being, meaning that you receive inspiration constantly and you just act on that inspiration. That's all you have to do. No more goal setting, because now you're just receiving inspiration in the moment, because that system is designed to bring you everything you want when you need it to do whatever you want to do, as long as it complies with your journey of self-discovery. When you're going off chasing this inauthentic version of yourself, then you're discovering the inauthentic version of yourself. And that's no fun. Well, you've done that enough. Everyone's done that enough, either in this lifetime or past lifetimes. You've come to this life and said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to approach this whole thing differently. I'm going to see it all differently. I'm going to believe not what the masses are telling me, but what my heart's telling me. I'm going to endeavor to see myself from the highest perspective possible. I am an eternal, limitless, magnificent being of pure positive love and acceptance. That's all I am. And I'm here on a journey of self-discovery to discover that fact. So I come into this illusion thinking I'm not that, and then I go on this journey to discover that, for me to discover that. The side effect will be an example for everyone else to follow, so they can do the exact same thing when they're ready.
Yes. I love all of that. It's so good. And it reminds me of, in my journey, I was really blessed to when I had my kind of dark night of the soul, or my manifestation event, as you would call it, where I really dove fully into meditation and, connected with Abraham Hicks and A Course in Miracles and all different kind of things. It was in a time like before, like a lot of the world we live in right now exists, with like social media and like things like that, right? And so everything I was creating, I created from that place of, this is bringing me a little bit of joy, right? I was dealing with my brother being sick and in the hospital, and my way of coping with that was finding these little things that brought me joy. And like you like, I feel like has been this like message that's coming through with this. It was very self-focused, right? It was self-focused because it wasn't about like on some level I was like, yeah, I hope somebody reads this quinoa mac and cheese recipe and enjoys it, but like really I'm making it because it's making me happy today, and that's what's giving me kind of this relief from dealing with, or helping me move through the situation I'm in right now. And so much of those early stages of what now is like, the blog and the Instagram and the YouTube and all this stuff really originated from this like day to day. I didn't have some like North Star, some like image or whatever I was going to, because I didn't even know the career I have right now existed when I started. It just happened to me. And I actually see now with a lot of the women that I work with, that can be a bit of an Achilles heel, because now it does exist, right? And now, instead of just being able to get back down to like the micro of the day, like what's bringing you joy today, what's interesting today, what's inspiring you today, it becomes a little bit more of like, well, I have to do whatever I need to do to get myself there, when I think part of the magic of my journey was that there was no there. I didn't even know there was a there to go to. So it was being able. So what would you say to someone that's kind of stuck in that, like that has, because I know a lot of people that listening are wanting to be like spiritual coaches, different versions of, or artists. We have musicians, actresses, all that listening. And very much there is kind of like this quote unquote end result example that exists out in the world now, and they're navigating like getting from where they are to the perception of where they feel like they want to go. How would you bring them back to that day to day?
The example that you are offering is not the version of you that exists in front of them today. It's the story that you told when you were in the dark night of the soul, and how you were led out of that, not by following someone else, but by being courageous and acting on inspiration that led you to the discovery of teachings that would eventually lead you out. So you've done all that work. This was all for you, and everything you're doing now is for you again. You have to understand that you're on a journey here, and that you've come here first. You've come here before others. You're paving the trail. You're blazing a new trail here that they can follow. So they follow it from your entire story. And that story is acting on inspiration, leading yourself out of where you think is a bad place and to the realization that it was always perfect, because everything had to happen to cause you to listen to your inner self and follow that guidance that eventually led you to the teachings and the understanding and the clarity that put you on your path so you could do the same thing, be an example for others to follow as well. It's all about coming out of the illusion that there is no inner communication and that there is no guidance to the reality that you're being guided and led and supported every step of the way, and eternally and truly and unconditionally loved for who you are, not for who anyone else is. You have to be you. That's how you are loved. And with that, we are complete.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was just, this has been wonderful. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for being here. And where can people find out more about all the amazing offerings you have and dive deeper into Joshua?
The podcast is Joshua Live everywhere. And the website is the Teachings of Joshua.com. And of course, you can just Google me, Gary Temple Bodley, and you'll find all the stuff. There's meditation that are out there and all kind of great stuff. And there's books on Amazon. And so the first book is A Perception of Reality that was just narrated. There's an audiobook coming out right away, narrated by Jackie Seiden.
Oh my God, I just had Jackie on the podcast. Jackie is now a friend of mine. Thanks to you, Gary. Yep. I love it. So we'll put all of those links below so you guys can find it and follow Gary and listen to more Joshua. And just thank you so much for being here. This was just such a blessing.
Thank you for having me.